Einen wunderschönen guten Abend, good evening from Germany. We welcome everyone who is today with us for our next meeting with Andrea Bentschneider, a genealogist from Germany, and your chance to ask all the questions related to German ancestry and your ancestors here in the country. Let me bring Andrea on stage. Hello, Andrea. Good evening.
Hello. Good evening from Hamburg and good morning, good afternoon to wherever you are. And maybe if you have a chance, share in the chat where you are, because it's always very curious to see who is joining us here today.
I'll start us off. Hello from Wetzlar, Germany. Here we go.
Wonderful.
Yeah, great to have you back, Andrea. Last time we talked already about genealogy and the questions our viewers had, and today we're going to talk about German church books, and maybe you can give us a short introduction of what's happening, and then we can get started. I invite all of you to also start writing your questions in chat, and and while Andrea is presenting a short introduction to the subject of tonight, we'll give the stage to you.
Okay, wonderful. So hello to Madrid, Spain. I see already. So yes, just like for those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrea Bentschneider. I had the pleasure to turn my hobby into a profession, and I can't believe it's been 20 years ago on July 1st this year. So we have an exciting year with lots of celebrations ahead, and so it's always a pleasure like spending time with anyone who has questions about their German genealogy, and that's what I'm here for. Yeah, last month we spoke a little bit about immigration records. This time we're focusing on church books, but anything else that comes up in terms of questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. So now let me see that I get to share my presentation with you, and so that we can get started. Do you see? Yes, that looks great. So again, today I have the pleasure of talking to you about church records. And so basically when it comes to church records, you need to know like the oldest existing church book in Germany is from the year 1510. And the important date when it comes to church records or records, genealogy records in general, is this mark. It's like for Prussian territories, it was October 1st, 1871. And for the rest of what is Germany today, it was January 1876 that the civil records, birth, marriage, death records were introduced. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, the civil records, in our next meeting that we have set for, let me see, it was June 7th, a Friday again. But today we focus on the church records, more or less. So basically, this is the important date. After that, you do your research in the civil records, and before that, you do the research in church books. And it is safe to say that up until 1700 and sometimes even up until 1650, it is usually as an average possible to do research. And also church books usually are available for research definitely until these dates, sometimes even until 1900, but after that, usually they aren't. So you have to remember for you to what to expect when you see a German church book, besides the old handwriting, and I show a slide of that in a second. It is usually there were 2 copies made, and I can talk about that a little bit later. You have to remember there are different denominations. I show that in the next slide, and with the different denominations come also different languages. So while most of the church books are written in German, if you have Roman Catholic records. They might be in Latin. Also, you have the Lutheran or Protestant church books. They are usually also in German, written in German. Also are the Reformed church books. Jewish church books obviously could be written in Hebrew or German. Huguenot church books may be written in French. Almost some of them definitely are written in French. So these are some languages that you may come across during your research. And so basically, then there are, what is important to know also, like the reason for why church books were kept to begin, or were started to begin with, it was basically a way of keeping statistics of the religious ceremonies. So a baptism record does not have the purpose of recording the birth. It is to record the baptism. The same goes for the marriage. The burials is not the death record, it is a burial record. And so sometimes, particularly in older church books, you always have the challenge, if there's just one date in a baptism or a burial record, then that usually is the date of the baptism and or burial, because like that's what was recorded. These books were kept like recorded to have statistics such as like how old were people when they died, were they married or not, etc. So this is just to give you a little bit of a background, the information that you can find in these baptism, respectively christening records. And these would be like information, obviously the name of the child. In older records, you would only have the father mentioned. In then newer records, the mother is mentioned as well. You have the baptism date. Then again, in newer records, you have a birth date. You probably have the birthplace, if it's not the same town as where the church is located. And usually you also have the name of an average of 3 godparents. Like more wealthy or important families had up to 10 godparents, but usually 3 were standard. In marriage records, you have the name and age of the groom and bride. Usually you have definitely also in older records, you have the father of the bride. In younger records, you may have, and you would also have information about the parents of the groom as well. You have the wedding dates, and sometimes there are witnesses mentioned, but that's not always necessarily. And with burials, you have usually the name of the deceased person and the age of that person. If it was a child or a woman, you usually would have the father or the husband or widower mentioned. You have again, the focus is on the burial. So you have the date of burial and the place, like if it is like in a specific cemetery. You often then, in again newer records, you have like the date and the place of death, and like also the cause of death. Again, that comes in handy for the statistics. And sometimes in some areas, you also may have listings of children or grandchildren, similar to what many people know in the obituaries in North America. So, and then I mentioned that before, when you come across church books, you may have something like that or like this. So this is what basically happens when you get, particularly the first record is from 1775, the second one from 1793. So you see, you do have some challenges. So now it's always the question, like, where do you get access to them? Family Search has a lot, many digitized records available in their online database. This is like one of their collections that's worth mentioning. That's for Protestant church records, but they also have Catholic church records. And basically, there's then also, excuse me, one important source is like particularly for Lutheran or Protestant church records, respectively also Reformed. You have the site Archeon in Germany. It's a subscription service. It currently has over 150,000 church books, and they are always more added on an ongoing basis. And Also, you have for Roman Catholic Church records, you have Matricula Online. It's actually a free of charge website, which currently has the church records of 4,665 different towns, and then again several books everywhere. And they come also from 22 different German archives. I mentioned the Huguenots, which is basically French Reformed. There's a special society there. They help with the index, and they have an index. They help with genealogy. In this case, it's most of the pages, in everything that I'm saying, with exception of Family Search, of course, most of the pages, unfortunately, are in German only. So you could use translation tools like Google Translate or similar. Mennonites is just a small, very small collection of, or a group of people, basically. And so, but they do have their own site as well, and an institution with a research center. And then, of course, there are Ancestry, My Heritage, both subscription services. And if you want to get access to German church books or German records in general, you need to have the international subscription. And another important place to mention is always the Society for Computer Genealogy. They call themselves CompGen, and it's a non-profit genealogy group in Germany, and they have lots of databases. Here you don't really see actual church records or records of sources, but you have them as secondary sources, so you do get information there. And as always, whenever you look at anything or do any kind of research in Germany, and I cannot emphasize it enough, it is always look at the quality of the source or the information that you have, who recorded it and when was it recorded. If it's something that someone recorded 20 years after the fact, then there may the chance that it may be correct. What is stated in the record may not be cannot be taken for granted, and really cannot be relied on 100%. But if it's a church record, then, well, some mistakes might happen there also. So, but again, the next question is did you check an original source? Did you have a chance to, for example, see the church book or the digital image of the church book on Family Search, on Archeon or something, or do you just have a transcription or in someone else's database or so? It's and then last but not least, also, is the source or the collection complete? I know in the case of Archeon, for example, and I think it's also the case with Matricula, it's the parishes themselves decide if they want to participate in that, and if they give their digitized images of their church book and make them available on these two platforms. So, and I know of some parishes where they chose not to make this available. So that's why always check, just because it's not online yet, and more and more data gets uploaded on a weekly basis. So come back and check if your parish, if the area you're looking for is not online yet. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It may just not be online yet. So, and with that, I basically finish my presentation for now, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Fantastic. Let's get started then, and take some time. We all invite all who are watching today to post your comments in the chat. We have received some comments already via email or through other channels, so we will get started now. Andrea, here's the first question received by email. When do church books start in Germany?
That varies greatly from region to region, and it has to do with also historical events. Actually, last month I had a blog series about all these events. The most decisive event in Germany was the 30-Year War, which was until the 1640 mid-40s or something like that. So basically, it's more or less, as a rule of thumb, there is a great possibility to find church records as of 1650. Of course, the one or other church may have burned down, or there was some other catastrophe why records got lost. Of course, we had 2 world wars, we had several floodings and other events going on, like and that always caused also an uproar, and that may have affected if records are still available or not today. So but basically, if you want to an average general explanation, then it's safe to say that in general you have a good chance to research back until 1700 for sure, with some luck until 1650.
Super. Alrighty. Next question. The baptism entry of one of my ancestors is written upside down in the church book. Mistake, or why? Is there like a reason for it?
Okay, yes, there is a reason for it, because it was basically, in that case, it was that the woman or the mother was not married. So then with that, she was considered a whore after standards back then. And so that's why, to declare that there was a mistake, or that, not a mistake, but to declare that she didn't fit in with the rules and regulations of that time, and so it was kind of a mark, to put a mark on her. And I also know that basically both the midwives and the pastors were really forced to like try to get the information out of the woman while she was in labor, to get the name of the father. And I had seen funniest entries where then the woman in labor claimed one thing, and then a week later she claimed another thing, and then she took off because it all wasn't true. But they desperately wanted to have a name for the father, and she made just up a lot of stories about that.
Okay, very interesting. Let's get to the next question. So again, a question we've received. So what is it, like the 2 times great-grandfather was Catholic, his wife Lutheran. Where do I find the wedding? So
Okay,
is it with the Catholics or the Lutherans?
That's a good question, and that depends a little bit. It depends if the area where the family lived was predominantly Catholic or predominantly Lutheran. If in Hamburg, for example, which is predominantly Lutheran, or most of North Germany, if a Lutheran person marries a Catholic person, it usually is recorded in the engagement, and they had like also a wedding contract. It's written in there, and it's always declared that the children have to be raised then in Lutheran faith. If they lived in an area which was like, let's say, Bavaria or something, where it was more, it's like more Catholic, then I would then obviously the Lutheran part of like the wife would have to give up her religion respectively. Catholicism became the main religion in that family, and that was how the children had to be educated.
Thank you, Andrea. Next one.
And actually, one last thing, you may actually find a note to the records in both churches, because usually, like when someone got married, they had to post the wedding bands, and that usually would happen in both the normal church of the wife or the bride and the normal church of the groom. So you would probably find like hints about that the wedding bands were posted in both churches, like the 3 weeks leading up to the marriage. And then it would say in the church where the marriage did not take place, it would have a reference to it that it's taking place in the other church.
Okay. Next one. I know that some church books got lost over the years, but aren't there any copies? I read about Zeitschriften, so newspapers or like magazines, hopefully spelled correctly.
Zeitschriften.
Zeitschriften. If I could read correctly.
Yeah, Zeitschriften is the German word for a secondary copy. And so basically what happened, I mentioned that there were churches burned down or things got lost over time. And so that's why also as an average, and that varies always a little bit historically in the different regions of Germany, it was that the pastors or the priests were asked or were required, it was more than being asked, they were required to have a secondary book. So they had 2 copies of the same church book, and then they put them on different places. So that's why if the church burned down, there was still a secondary copy of the events that took place. You sometimes see that you have like the teacher who was writing the books, and then you had one person sitting at the end of the year and then copying down the whole book. And so you see 2 different handwritings, and you sometimes have even different information, because if they knew at the end of the year already that the child who was baptized in March died, then sometimes you have a remark about that death in that secondary copy. So a secondary copy may actually have more information than you would think.
Okay, I think the next question might also fit in this direction. In the wedding entry, the last name of my ancestors has a type or like a different writing. Maya instead of Maya with A. They are from Bavaria. Is that normal? Is that something that happens oftentimes, or?
It actually it does, because basically it's like, as an average, again, you can say up until 1900, and I was really surprised to learn that it really was that late. Most of the particular rural population was illiterate. And it's like in the cities, they were a little bit more educated, but like in the rural areas, the children went to school for like 3, 4, 5 years. And there was like no emphasis on really educating them. And so most people couldn't read or couldn't write. And so it was up to the priest, the pastor, or I don't know, the owner of a manor estate, or some person in front of them to decide how a name was spelled. And so the spelling of a name of the same person can change several times during the course of the year. If they move to another place, if they came with a different dialect and then they didn't know what to do with it. And it's basically similar to what happens when you look at the census records in America, where most of it was just spelled how someone understood it. And honestly, when you pronounce the name Meyer, it doesn't make a difference if you spell it with an E or with an A. The AI version is more Bavarian, the EI is more in other areas. But then you can also have, instead of the I, you can have a Y in there, both with an E and an A in front of it. So that's basically, at the end of the day, it is the same person. Like, you always have to make sure that you see that the dates are matching, the names are matching, all other information are matching. But generally, that does happen.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay, the next question is for Hamburg, and maybe visit there or call. My relative was born in Hamburg, 1842. Do employees at the civil record offices or churches in Hamburg speak English?
Okay, so if you're looking for a birth record from 1842, you would be looking at a church record. So you're not looking at a civil records office yet. And basically, some do, some don't. Some are willing to support, some aren't. Usually, if you approach anyone, there is a great website like for translation. It's called deepl.com. DEEPL.com. I would always write a text in English, have it translated by Google Translate or DeepL, put it in German in there too, and then send that out. And then whatever their response may be, you can use that online translation tool again to communicate with them. All right. But usually it is like, also as probably everywhere, we do have a lack of staff at archives, at public offices, ever since like Corona and everything else going on. It's like, it takes so much longer to get answers. It takes longer, to get a response, basically. Like, if before Corona, I ordered a copy of a certificate, I would get it within a week if I was lucky. Nowadays, I usually wait 1 or 2 or 3 months at the same office. So That's like many archives, they have the problem that many people retired in the last years and they did not have the funds or the possibilities to replace the staff. And so with that, it's gotten ridiculous, like to gain access to certain records or to even get appointments at archives.
Okay. Next question. The village where my ancestors were born had no church. Where do I search for entries?
Okay, wonderful. There are several places that you can look to see like what church is available. Usually I would start with a plain old Google search. I would type in the village, like the name of the village, and then the German word Kirche with it. Then can I write in there?
In the chat,
No,
you mean?
yeah, there. So it's like the German word for church you would basically do. So then you have also different places. If you're looking for a town in the time between 1871 and up until the First World War, 1914, then you could look at Meyer's Gazetteer. That is a great source also to look for that. Also, Family Search has a wonderful wiki with a lot of information about German towns, German church books, how to find it. And again, it's like there also, I would just look for in their catalog and in their wiki page, and I'm sure you will find that.
Thanks, Andrea. Here's like a comment based on something you have said before. So the Y umlaut was definitely a surprise letter to me when I started reading the church records.
Okay, yeah. But that is actually that was just the way how they wrote it. That they have two dots on top of the Y. You know, it's like the same way, like, but it doesn't change anything in the pronunciation. It's probably just like to really state that you have the Y letter with it. Another one that you will also find in church records often is like if you have a double letter, like the name Anna with a double N, that you would have just one N and a dash on top, and the dash on top of one letter always makes a double, basically. So you would have ANA with a dash or like a hyphen or whatever on top of the N, and then would make sure that the name it's actually spelled Anna.
Okay, thank you, Andrea.
And I see another question right below it with a poison with a B. So
this
yes,
one here, yeah.
Right, and it's not a B. It's like another funky letter that we have besides the U with the umlaut, two dots on top, or the A or the O. This is actually an SZ. So it looks like a B, but it's slightly different, and it's like it's spelled like, or it's pronounced like a S. So it's Preußen. It's like the English word for Prussia. So it would be like also you could, instead of the SZ, you can write SS, a double S, and then that is basically the same pronunciation, and both is correct to spell. So it's not a B, it's an SZ.
Thanks. Alrighty, next one. I have found my Catholic ancestor in a Lutheran church book, and he was Catholic until he died. How is that possible?
Okay, that is possible because then there may, just like he may have moved to an area where there was no Catholic church anywhere. You also find and since the church books, like and the priests had, their job was to track all these records, to track the baptisms, to track the burials and everything. That's why you will also find, you may find Jews in Lutheran or Catholic church books in the same way. It's like if he was Catholic in an area where there was no Catholic church, then that's all that he had, that could do. What he practiced at home in private is one thing, but for the official events, church events, that's when he had to attend the church respectively. Then that's when it was recorded there.
Okay, thank you very much. Here's the next one. My second great-grandfather, Klaas Klaassen, came from Emden in 1840, and I understand that era uses the patronymic naming system. How do I go about trying to find his parents? Maybe church books can help. I'm not sure.
Yes, it can. And Emden is great because it's in East Frisia. And East Frisia, Ostfriesland, it's this area in on the North Sea towards the Dutch border. And there's a wonderful genealogical society, and they have created a lot of local heritage, family heritage books, which means that they usually they took the church books and entered the data and collected it so that they have a presentation by family. And with the patronymic naming system, what it basically means, it's kind of similar to what the Jews also had. It's like, so Klaas is the name of the son, and Klaassen means son of Klaas. So basically this Klaas, his father's name was Klaas as well. However, in 1840, the patronymic naming system wasn't in place anymore. That was discontinued earlier in the 1800s when Napoleon came and occupied that area, and he and the local governments, they really wanted to know who they could draft for their military and who they could tax, and with all this patronymic naming system, which meant if you basically, your last name was your father's first name, and so on, and so you did not have one identical last name over generations, but it would change from generation to generation. And so that's why, around the earlier 1800s, that whole patronymic naming system was discontinued.
Okay.
Now they're thinking of bringing it back to a certain extent, or at least allowing some of the names back. So I just read that.
Let's see. Here's another good question. I have a line with origin information that resulted in an extended family in America with mental illness. Are there mental health records available from Germany from the mid-18th backward?
Okay. It may be possible. Most likely it isn't, because there's only a certain direction.
Oh, I think we have lost Andrea. I will check to see if I can reach her. 1 second. Let's see. Andrea, are you there? Okay, I will try to solve the problem. I'll be back in a second. I've just talked to Andrea. Her internet connection broke, and we try to fix it within the next 2-3 minutes. If that is not possible, we have to reschedule for another session. So Let's see if we get that fixed. Okay, we have Andrea back. Turn off the music. And yeah, super.
Yes, wonderful. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you so much. I'm so sorry. It's like we even have a backup plan here with a Wi-Fi, but that didn't work either. So I'm so sorry. Like I'm in the middle of the second biggest city of Hamburg of Germany, and one would think that they are able to have figured out the internet. So, but maybe we broke it. We broke the internet. So anyhow, where was I? Oh yeah,
We were at this
the
question.
mental
So
illness. Yes. So basically, it is that patient records are usually kept at the hospital for a while, and then they go, like after a certain number of years, they would be handed over to the archives, and then it's up to the archive to decide whether it's worth keeping. You know, it's like you cannot keep every piece of paper that's ever generated anywhere on any person in all over the world. Basically all the archives would go crazy with that. So and then again, in some cases there may be exceptions, so it's always worth checking at the local archive. I would begin usually with like on a municipal level, like looking for a city archive or a district archive, and then they usually know. Even call the organization, usually call their administrational office of the hospital and ask them or send them an email.
okay, thanks, Andrea. Here's just a fun comment with the technical difficulties. So technical difficulty just means we have time to search for some of the great stuff you have already mentioned.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Oh, I have to take this one out in a second. Let's go with this question now.
Okay.
My grandfather was born in Salzburg around 1884. I have heard all the records were destroyed during World War II. Is that true?
Well, I have to admit that I'm not an expert on Austria, where Salzburg is located, but I have not heard that yet. So it's always worth checking again in local archives in Salzburg, or also I would assume that Family Search probably also has a wonderful site for Austrian church books and Austrian records. So that's always worth checking. And I know that they have state archives just the same way in Austria as we have in Germany. So I would just check with them. I know that Ancestry has a lot of church books. I'm not sure if that's just for Vienna or not, but that's usually where I would really begin searching.
Okay.
You know, look on Family Search and enter in the where it says for the catalog, enter Salzburg, Austria, and see what's coming up. That's usually what I do.
My ancestor migrated late 1870s by a Dutch boat to escape the draft, so there's no passenger list of immigration records. Where is the best place to find German records from East Prussia close to Tilsit, which is now in Kaliningrad? I haven't been able to find even the family name in the National Archives.
Okay, wonderful. Yes. That is not uncommon, that when areas became Prussian, or particularly that in Prussia the young men tried to escape from being conscripted to the army. So the 1870s is yes, absolutely. And it's also not uncommon that they then went to the Netherlands and took a boat there, probably also to cover their tracks, because they were afraid if they took a German boat out of one of the German ports that there might be a problem. East Prussia is a little bit challenging area because there were many losses in terms of records during like church books, etc., during the particular World War II. However, family search is a great place to start. If it's the late 1870s, there is a collection on ancestry, which is also located, or basically the original collection of that is located at the Berlin State Archive, where you have civil records for that area, which began in 1874. However, I'm not sure if he left in the late 1870s, if he would actually have created a record there yet. So I would begin really looking on Archeon, like if he was a Lutheran. On Archeon also has records for the Berlin Church Archive, which also has the collections of the church books from the old German archives, like old German territories like East Prussia, Pomerania, etc. So those would be great places to start. Look at Archeon, look at family search, and otherwise, like if you have the international access to ancestry, look there.
Great, thank you. Next one. Question for Saxony. My great-grandfather always just said he was born in Saxony, never identifying a town or village or even area. His wife was from Dresden, and we have church records for her. Where do I start looking for him?
Okay, I would probably begin looking for their wedding record, because like if the wife was from Dresden, then most likely the marriage took place in Dresden, because usually the marriages took place at the birthplace, like at the place where the wife was born, or at least the family lived, since the wife's family had to pay for the wedding. So this is and that's usually how you would go about. Otherwise, like that's where I would always start. Another place is also like, if worse comes to worse, it always depends on what last name it is. Like if it's a very common last name, then that's basically the only chance that you have. Look for children, because sometimes you then have like the children's records, you have like godparents usually were close family members. If they had the same name as the father, like the husband, then it often says where they are from. So that may be a hint where the father comes from. So those are places to do. If it's an uncommon name, it's also always worth checking like family search or other databases and just enter the name and see what towns pop up. And usually there's like more of a connection, like where you see like they're coming from an area, and that's basically, and then you just have to go by trial and error and try to find them. But I first would start in Dresden, see if you have the marriage, that's the best record, see if the children were born there, or even if she or he preferably died there, then you would have his information where he came from.
Mm-hmm. Here's a short question, but maybe a good one too. Were many Catholic records moved to Lutheran databases?
Okay, I know that on Archeon, which is basically a more predominantly Lutheran Reformed side of like Lutheran or Protestant, respectively, Reformed church books, I know, for example, they do have Catholic records on their side too. However, the one that I found, I think, was a military church book or something like that. So it's like, again, it may just have to do like with that. I know that also. So I guess like at the end, it has to do like with what kind of agreements are there between the parish, who is basically the owner of the church records, and whoever publishes it. That's how I would put it, basically.
Okay. Let's see. Here's a question we received. My great-grandmother, Catherine Fuchs, immigrated with her family from Darmstadt, Germany, when she was 5 years old. I'm not sure what records are available and what I should be looking for. Any advice you can give would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, usually with these kind of questions, it always helps for me to know also what time we're talking about. Are we talking 1700? Are we talking 1800? Are we talking 1850? Because then different records may exist that would make this available. I mean, you should have her birth record or baptism record for sure. You then should also, like, that's the only record that would be available in terms of church records for her based on her age. And then all you could do is just like look for siblings, maybe, which you probably had in America, or definitely look for her parents. Fuchs is not such a uncommon name, so it's like that is a little challenging. But since you have the town, then that's where I would be looking for.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. Next one, there is a time frame at least. Where would I find mid-1800s Catholic Church records from Königsberg?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I'm more familiar with the Lutheran records. That's a really good question. I would actually start with family search. 1850s is before the civil records begin. I would start on family search, and then I will have to look that up. I have an idea, but I don't want to say anything wrong. So I will make a note of that and will make sure to answer that next time. On June 7th, we said. On June 7th, I will answer that question.
Sounds good. Alrighty. Next one. How to find records of Jewish ancestors who likely were from Russia at that time, Warsaw area, and went to Hamburg Alto in the 1880s, and how to find any records of intermarriage. On the birth certificates of grandparents list the mother as single.
Okay. The records, both the Jewish records and like also the civil records for Hamburg and Altona are located at the State Archive in Hamburg. So if intermarriage, they would be, again, if it was in the 1880s, that would have been recorded in the civil records, and they are again available at the Hamburg State Archive or on Ancestry. And the subscription, I know that as of the 1845, it was mandatory for like interfaith marriages in Hamburg that they needed. There was a special wedding department which belonged to the police department, and anyone who wanted to get married in Hamburg needed to register there, needed to pay a fine and a fee to get the permit to be allowed to get married. And in order to get married, you also had to comply with certain rules and regulations, like you had to be a citizen of Hamburg, which meant that you had to have a certain income, a profession, and like had to have served in the military, etc. So, and that was what like how people were allowed to get married. So in later years, in the 1880s, that didn't matter that much anymore. But again, as of 1845, if a Jew married a Christian person, there are special records kept. And there again, it is also clearly stated that usually the children were then raised in what faith they were raised in. So, but again, 1880s, I would look for certificates, for birth certificates, and that's where you find more information.
Okay. I think this question, it's a little later, but I think this fits in here. Where can you find any information on ancestors back in 1827?
Okay,
So,
there you go. That there usually the best type of record would be the church records. There again, it depends a little bit on where they lived. To know like the area, it's like if they lived in the city, then there may be additional information about the profession, or you may have address books, or you may have like citizen records or something like that, military records. If they lived in the countryside and were poor, like farm helpers or whatever, then usually you only would have a church book entry. Then it depends also a little bit. I know that's a question that's being asked a lot. It's like census records. We do not have census records like they are known in America. It depended on the individual German state. Like if censuses were taken, some were taken really like in Mecklenburg, for example, you had a number of 5 different censuses taken at different times, which are very excellent for doing genealogy. In Hamburg, there were censuses taken, but that was more for statistical reasons, and they don't exist anymore. The actual sheets, you only have the statistics, what they did with the information they collected, and so it varies greatly. And again, it depends on where they lived, but usually you would go with the church books first, and then depending on in that area where they lived, if there are additional records available.
Okay, thank you. Another question relating to church records for Curlin, an der Passant or Passant. Passant, ich weiß gar nicht. Pomeranian from the mid-1800s are all either lost or destroyed. What are some alternate resources for info from that time period? Main interest is birth data and parents.
Okay, wonderful. So first, what I would try to see, it's like if there are any land ownership records, it's like, so there may be based on the profession that they had, they may have been members in guilds. Maybe they had owned land. That's what you could be looking for. Military is difficult because Pomerania then belonged to Prussia, and doing Prussian military research is close to impossible because like there are no name indexes, and you really would need to know when a person served at a certain point in which regiment, etc. So otherwise you're looking for, I don't know, the one needle in 10 haystacks. It's like I would see it like also in always like in the local archives, you have a chance that you can not just search in the general church books or general big collections of records, but there may also be a chance that you have files on individual persons. And usually they have finding aids where you can search like the archives holding by a name. So that's something that's worth looking for. Also, like in Pomerania, there are many, like what is always a great site or like place to go is local genealogical societies, because they are very like, they do a lot of work, and sometimes they are able to reconstruct families by scraps of pieces of paper and information that they find somewhere. So it's like, it's always also worth checking out the local genealogical societies, because maybe someone had a hand-drawn family tree in their family and that survived the war, and that may help you find your family.
Super. Next one. When did the surname start being the father's surname? Some of my ancestors took the mother's last name. Okay, that's interesting.
Okay, wonderful. That has to do probably, I would think, again, that usually with any kind of question, I forgot to mention that at the beginning, I'm sorry about that. It's always helpful if I get more information, such as the time and the area we're talking about. But basically what happens is, like, my last name is Bentschneider because my great-grandfather was born illegitimately, and that was the maiden name of his mother. Since there's no father inside officially, I have my theory about this, but that's why our name is Bentschneider. Then you have this whole situation where you have like someone is has a last name like, I don't know, Miller called Smith. So that is a combination when a child was born illegitimately. And then you had like Miller being the maiden name of the mother and Smith being the last name of the father. However, then again, it also depends on when it is and where it was, because sometimes in some areas you have first the maiden name and then the father's name, or you have it the other way around. And also, again, you have to know where you are there. And then the last alternative that I can come up with this, again, not knowing where this is, I would look towards like Westphalia, where it also Bavaria, but more even so Westphalia, where it was that you had like farm names. So if a man married a woman who inherited the farm, then the last name of the family became this the name attached to the farm. And so in that way, like the wife's maiden name was more important because she brought the property into the family, and so he took on her name.
I think here's one question that kind of ties into this one. Yes. Is there a way to determine where particular surname is predominant? I'm interested in the surname Storkmann.
Yes, there are. Let me just see if I can find this here. There are last name distribution lists, maps that you can also, if you go to the computer genealogy society that I mentioned for you. Let me just see. I have this here. I may have this. I'm not sure if I have this here. Hang on. Otherwise, I will make sure to post that and bring that next week, next month again, to the last name distribution.
We can maybe start off with those questions.
Yes.
Then
yes. Oopsie. And I know it's getting close, and I promise that for people to like, maybe I share my screen real quick again, because I promised people to tell them what's coming up. So again, next time, so that you're not missing this. Next time we have like Friday, June 7th, the same time again, 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, or 9 p.m. Central European Standard Summer Time. We talk about German civil records. Again, it will be a brief introduction about the civil records, and then I answer your questions about it. I noted these 2 questions to look at again. And also, in case, like, if you have any, like, contact us if you have any questions, like if you need assistance with your research, then please feel free to contact us, follow us on social media, or sign up for our newsletter, because like, again, I mentioned that we have our 20th anniversary this year, and this month, how fitting it is, like with this topic for today, we have a wonderful giveaway from our partnership with the team Archeon. They offered a 3-month pass access to all their collections. And the winner will be drawn among the new people who sign up during this month until May 31st to our newsletter. So make sure to join us, and then you get a chance to win 3 months unlimited access to Archeon. And last but not least, I have another exciting information. We're working hard in the back of creating something special. And so something special is coming up. It will not be long before I can reveal what's coming up. So make sure to join our waitlist here. Join the newsletter there. You will even get an information about how to find the hometown of your German ancestors. So please make sure you can scan the QR code or like enter the name. And yes. So I look forward to seeing you there. So, but we still have 2 more minutes. Do we want to take another?
Yeah, let's do one final question. I think this might be a big one. I haven't read it yet, so I can't even see your face anymore. Hello, I'm looking for a 1799 birth record from my second great grandmother and a 1812 death record for a third great grandfather. The family home was in Oyendorf, Hamburg, but I think that parent names are different now for research. The only clue that I have is that a school called Grundschule Eichenholzstraße after my ancestor was built on the property after the home burned down in 1813. I think Hamburg State Archives have hinted that the family records are very few due to a fire in Hamburg in 1848. Any ideas?
I would look for the church records because, like, Oehlendorf was part of Hamburg, but the church records should not have been located. Like, the fire was actually 1842, and it was in the center, a small area in the center of Hamburg. So usually, like, Oehlendorf was then on the outskirts of what is Hamburg. Like, even today, it's still the outskirts. So that should have not been affected by that. I would go and look for the church records.
I think this is a very fitting end for the theme of today, church records. Thank you so much, Andrea, for your time today, and that you take that time to answer the questions people have. It's always great to have you, and to learn from you, to also enjoy the company and the news. I invite everyone to maybe scroll back after the video ends, and it's up on Facebook, on YouTube, to check out the QR codes and to subscribe to the newsletter and maybe win a free trial with Archeon. Thank you, Andrea. Have a good night, and thank you to all the viewers. We wish you a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is in your time zone. Bye.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.